What is up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, here to education on health, fitness, social well-being. Today, guys, we're talking about why, in order to grow, you have to get stronger.
I am the greatest.
Someone with color. Someone with color. Someone with dash. Someone with color.
Alright, so a lot of you have often heard me say in past videos that there's a direct connection between strength and muscle hypertrophy, that everybody has this weird misconception that that you either have to focus on getting stronger, like if you're a powerlifter, or getting bigger if you're, like, say, a bodybuilder. If you care about your aesthetics, then you need to focus on size. Then if you care about getting stronger, you need to focus on like heavy compound movements, things like that. And I've explained to you guys that that's not the case. The two go hand in hand for natural lifters. In order to get bigger, in order to effectively grow your muscles, in order to induce muscle hypertrophy, you have to get stronger. So in order to understand this, guys, you have to have a little bit of a breakdown and understand the science behind exactly how it is that your muscles grow. So I will leave a link in the description down below that goes over that in detail. It's a pretty quick, easy read, but it'll give you like all the science behind it as far as how things work with your hormones and your myofibrils, which is your muscle cells essentially, and everything like that, and just how that works. So what I'm going to be doing is giving you guys more of a simplistic, direct application and breakdown. So the way that it works, let's take a brand new beginner, right? Is that when they start lifting, you're gonna have what's called the beginner gains, right? Now, a big part of that, guys, is understanding like how our muscles work to begin with. So we have motor neurons, and those are what activate the muscle cells. They're what activate the myofibrils and allow them to contract. By contracting, we produce force. That force is what allows us to move weight. It's what allows us to lift weight, right? So when a beginner first starts, a lot of that initial strength that you see them get comes from the fact that their bodies are becoming better at activating those motor neurons, which activate the muscle cells. They're basically getting better at the movement pattern. They're getting more efficient. Their nervous system is getting more efficient with the movement. So that's why you see a lot of like beginners going from being able to lift maybe say like just 50 pounds to 100 pounds very quickly on a movement, because they're getting used to the movement itself. So basically, practice makes perfect. That's essentially what that is. Once they've reached that point, the rest of their strength and that growth is coming from the fact that they are constantly making their muscles, making their bodies go through a stimulus that it has not previously been exposed to. So that's where the term progressive overload comes into play, guys. Essentially, if you do the same amount of sets for the same amount of reps with the same amount of weight, you are not giving your body a reason to grow, because the ways that our bodies grow, the way that our muscles grow, is they respond to muscle tensions. And that's where the whole time under tension thing comes into. Like I've explained in my video over that before, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're just constantly slowing down the reps. No, time under tension simply means that you're putting your muscles under a new stress that they have not gone through, under a greater stress, a greater workload than what they were used to before, which means if you're just going at a nice steady pace, let's say you're going through a nice steady pace on curls, and you go through a nice full range of motion for 3 sets of however 5, 10, 12, that once you've done that, you increase the weight. Why? Because you are then increasing the workload. You are increasing the stress that your body is used to, giving your muscles a reason to grow. Because when you do that, you cause muscle damage. As your muscles damage, they repair and get stronger. So in order to keep your muscles effectively growing, you have to basically increase that stress, increase that damage, so that they have a reason to adapt and grow even stronger than what they were. If you keep providing the same stimulus, the same sets, the same reps, same weight over and over and over, then you're not providing a greater stress. Therefore, your body has no reason to build back up stronger. Your muscles have no reason to get stronger, no reason to get bigger, because you're not giving it a reason to. It's like if you're already strong enough and your muscles are already at a good enough size to where you can bench 135 pounds, and you just keep working with that weight, you're not giving it a reason to be able to bench more weight. Why? Well, because the muscles are basically saying is that, hey, I can already bench this much weight at the current point I'm at. I don't have to grow in order to effectively move more weight. So the way that you force your muscles to do that is by adding weight to the bar. That's where mechanical tension comes in. That's what causes myofibrillar hypertrophy. That's the hypertrophy, guys, that basically comes from you gaining more muscle cells. Like say your muscles break down, you do a lot stronger, you gain more muscle cells, and as like I said, as you continue to lift, those motor neurons become better at activating those muscle cells so that you can produce more force. Because whenever you contract a muscle, guys, all the muscle cells within it are fully contracted. That's it. So the only way to get stronger is by creating new muscle cells so that you have more myofibrils to contract. That's how that works. Now, with that being said, a lot of people ask questions like, okay, well then why is it that some powerlifters, don't look like they're that big, but they're really strong compared to some bodybuilders? First of all, guys, that's half of that is kind of a myth. You have to understand this, that if you take a bodybuilder and a powerlifter who are about in the same weight class, they usually aren't that different in size. If you take like, let's say like 190-pound bodybuilder and 190-pound powerlifter, they really aren't that different in size. They look different due to the aesthetics, because why? Bodybuilders are controlling their caloric intake. And as I've explained in the video before, I talk about, the difference between powerlifters and bodybuilders. A lot of bodybuilders do more accessory movements that put more emphasis on, hypertrophy in their muscles, but the main thing is their caloric intake. They're gonna look a lot leaner, so they appear more muscular. Basically, a bodybuilder in their off season, when they're bulking, looks a lot like a powerlifter would in season. Because like I said, powerlifters don't really care about aesthetics. They just care about getting stronger and bigger, especially in that heavier weight class. But if you look at some of the leaner powerlifters, they look fairly built. They look fairly aesthetic, such as myself. Like, we're leaner, so you can see the muscular development. And it's also understanding, guys, that the reason powerlifters seem to be so much stronger is because they put a focus on myofibrillar hypertrophy, mechanical tension, moving more weight on the bar. They work with things like, instead of 3 sets of 10 sets of 3, because that's going to allow them to work with more weight. It's going to allow them to better activate those muscle fibers and get better control of those of their motor functions. That's basically what it is. They're basically working more with the central nervous side of strength. They get better with the motor neurons, and that's what allows them to effectively lift more weight. Whereas a lot of bodybuilders do was focus more on sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. That's what you get, like I said, when bodybuilders come in and they're just chasing the pump. Now that's the type of hypertrophy that causes your muscles to get bigger, but not necessarily stronger. That's what happens when you come in, right? And you just get a lightweight and you just go, and you're just getting the pump, right? That's called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Basically, you're just filling the cells around your muscles with fluid that's giving it that appearance of getting bigger. So that's the way that a lot of bodybuilders train, which is why they can seem bigger but not get stronger. But even with training like that, guys, even when you're doing that, they still have to progressively overload. And even if they're not so much focusing on moving more weight, they have to be doing more reps, or they have to be doing less rest time in between. If they come in, let's say that the first time you got that crazy pump, you came in, you did just sets of 20 on each arm with 15-pound dumbbells on curls. If you keep doing that, eventually your body gets used to that as well. So you're going to have to, once again, progressively overload. And that's a big thing, guys. When I say get stronger, I'm not talking about your 1 rep max. That's just a way of testing if you've gotten stronger. It's not necessarily like something that makes you stronger. It's just a way of testing it. When I say get stronger, I mean that you're either able to lift the same amount of weight for more reps than you did before, or you're able to lift, a certain amount of weight, for the same reps as last time, but it's 5 pounds heavier than last time. Maybe you decreased your rest time. Maybe before you could get 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds if you had a minute rest in between, but now you can do it with 30 seconds rest in between. You're doing something to provide a greater stress on the body, to provide a new stimulus for your muscles. Now, another thing, once again, comes from quote-unquote muscle confusion, right? So for example, people who come in, you do a brand new exercise, that can help stimulate muscle growth as well. Why? Because your body's not used to that. It's a brand new stress. Now, granted, a lot of, once again, your new strength on that movement is going to come from the fact that you're not used to it. Your muscle fibers get better activated because your motor neurons get used to the movement once again. So that's where a lot of new strength on a movement comes from. But as I've discussed before, the problem with constantly going from exercise to exercise, always changing it up, is that you have no consistency, and you're going to get a lot better results from focusing on a movement, progressively overloading on it, getting stronger on that movement, than constantly changing, from movement to movement to movement. That is going to help you induce a lot of sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, but it's not going to help you with that solid base myofibrillar hypertrophy. That's really what you guys want to go for. And I'll do a separate video over the differences between myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy at a later time. Now, with that being said, people will often ask, well, Marcellus, what about the hypertrophy rep range? Isn't it true that, like, if you want to work on strength, and you do, sets of 3 to 5, if you want to work on hypertrophy, 8 to 12, you want to work on endurance, 15 to 20? No, guys, that's not the case. That's not true. So here's the thing you guys have to understand. At the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, the rep range you pick does not really matter. What I mean by that is, do different rep ranges have different benefits, pros and cons and advantages? Yes, but at the end of the day, whether you're doing 5 sets of 3, whether you're doing 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 12, 5 sets of 20, it doesn't matter, because regardless, you're going to have to eventually increase the workload in some way or another. If you're just doing, 3 sets of 10 and you want to stay with that same weight, you're going to have to eventually do 3 sets of 12. Or if your goal is to increase the weight, then if you're doing 5 sets of 3, you have to increase the weight eventually. 3 sets of 10, increase the weight eventually. 4 sets of 12, increase the weight eventually. You have no choice but to do that. And the reason that there's such thing as a hypertrophy rep range, guys, is simply because, okay, think about it. If you come in and you do 3 sets of 10, right? versus 10 sets of 3, you're able to get 30 reps in a lot faster than if you do the 10 sets of 3, right? So that's why that's called the hypertrophy rep range, because you're able to come in effectively, hit each muscle group for 30 reps with maybe about a minute rest between sets and be good to go. You're good, you're solid, you can get out of there, right? So you kind of take away from that if you're in the gym for 2 to 3 hours anyway, because you're so focused on volume, because that's the benefit of the hypertrophy rep range. But at the end of the day, guys, let's say you do come in and do 3, let's say you do 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds, right? So 3 times 10, that's 30, times 100, that's 3,000 pounds worth of work. That's 3,000 pounds worth of work that you should put your muscles under. But if you come in and you do 10 sets of 3 with 200 pounds, right? Yeah, you're in the gym a little bit longer, because if you're going heavier, you're probably gonna need about 2 to 3 minutes rest instead of a minute and a half. But look at it, 10 times 3, that's 30, times 200 pounds, that's 6,000 pounds worth of work. So technically, all factors being equal, genetically, because that's something else you guys have to keep in mind. Some people, and that's what the link down below will go over, due to things, due to their satellite cells and how well their satellite cells work, and due to like their hormone regulation, etc. Some people will put on muscle at a faster rate than others. In the same way that some people will get stronger at a faster rate than others. You can have 2 people who are on the exact same program, right? And one of them may put muscle on a little bit faster than the other, but the other one may get a little bit stronger at a faster rate than the other. But regardless, in order for both individuals to either get stronger or put on muscle mass, they have to progressively overload. But back to my example, the point is, guys, if all factors being equal to where, let's say they put muscle mass on at the same rate, they get stronger at the same rate, everything like that, the person who did 10 sets of 3 with 200 pounds is going to grow and get stronger a lot faster than the person who did 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds. Why? Because he did double the workload. He put his body through more work. And that's all that means, guys, when it says that our bodies don't understand, they don't know weight, they just know tension. It means that our body's not aware of how much weight we're doing. It doesn't know the difference between 40 pounds and 60 pounds. It just knows stress, it just knows tension, it just knows workload, total workload. So the person who did, 6,000 pounds of work is obviously gonna grow at a faster rate than the person who does 3,000 pounds of work, all of the factors being equal. Now, if the person were to do 10 sets of 3 with 100 pounds, and the other person does 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds, and all factors being equal, they will grow at the same rate, at the same pace. They'll get stronger and put on muscle mass at the same rate. The only difference is the person who did 3 sets of 10 will get in and out the gym a lot faster. That's why it's the hypertrophy rep range. That's why it works so well for that. Whereas the person who's doing, 3 sets of 10 can focus more on just power, explosiveness, as far as working, like, once again, with their motor neurons. So that's the benefit of that. So there's pros and cons to each. And then with, say muscular endurance, we start getting those high rep ranges, yeah, you're working more on the endurance phase. But at the end of the day, guys, it doesn't matter, because you can have somebody, if they just naturally, due to their genetics, put muscle at a faster rate, and they're doing, sets of 3 and 5, versus the person who doesn't put muscle on at a faster rate, and they're doing 3 sets of 10, even though that person's in the hypertrophy rep range, the other guy's still gonna put on more muscle faster. That's just how it is. That's just genetics. That's the importance, guys, of not comparing yourself to anybody else. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get you guys to understand. When you see like certain individuals who put on muscle a lot faster, who so happen to be working with a certain rep range, that doesn't mean that's gonna necessarily work that way for you. If you see somebody who's working with a certain rep range and they seem to be getting really strong really quickly, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna work for you. That's why you have to look at yourself. But understand that regardless of what the individual is, assuming they are natural, in order to get stronger, to get bigger, they have to progressively overload. The two go hand in hand. As your muscles get bigger, you will get stronger. You will effectively be able to lift more weight. Why? Because you have more muscle fibers to contract, which will help you produce more force and lift more weight. But the only way to stimulate that, to even initiate that, is to try and get stronger and lift heavier in the first place. So it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's a cycle, guys. They go together hand in hand. Now, this does not apply, I've stressed this so much in past videos, to people who are not natural. So many of you guys will see these people who say, oh, progressive overload doesn't matter. Oh, I just confuse the muscle all the time. I'm not consistent with my moves. I just do whatever, anything I want. Look, I'm getting bigger, stronger. That's because, guys, when you're on drugs, when you're on steroids, testosterone, gear, all that stuff, you don't have to do anything. If you're on the right stack, you can literally sit on your butt and still put on muscle mass. I know that's some of you guys have heard that, hey, they may be on words, but they still have to put in the work, guys. That is not true. That is a myth. Now, is someone who's on drugs and training consistently and correctly probably gonna look a lot better than somebody who's on drugs sitting on their butt? Yes, but they will both still put on muscle mass regardless, because that is the whole point. You have to look up the history of what steroids and drugs like that were for, guys. They were to help people that had medical conditions put on muscle mass who weren't able to work out. You have to look at the history of things, guys. And it just got involved in the bodybuilding world. That's all that happened. But that's why, once again, you can't compare yourself to other people, because there's this whole thing about like, oh man, fake natties are so messed up because, you know, they set this false standard. And that's true. I completely agree with that. That's why I'm like, hey, do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want to your body as long as you don't infringe upon the rights of others. But it does set a false pretense. But you wouldn't even have to worry about that if you would only focus on yourself. All right, guys, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say as far as the connection between strength and hypertrophy. Once again, when I say getting stronger, I simply mean making your muscles grow through a new workload, a higher workload than what they did last time, providing that new stimulus. That's it. Whether that means increasing the weight, increasing the reps, decreasing the rest time. The reason that most people, or people that know what they're talking about, put the emphasis on weight increase is because that is the most efficient and optimal way to do it. Why? Well, think about it. If you start resting with a minute and a half and you just keep decreasing the rest time, you're eventually to the point where you're only resting 10 seconds between sets. It's a lot harder to move weight effectively if you only get 10 seconds rest between sets. Now, can you start like increasing the reps? Yes, but you should do that to a certain point. Let's say you start working on lift a certain amount of weight for 3 sets of 5, then you build it 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 7, 3 sets of 8. That's fine. You get to the point where you're at 3 sets of 10. That's fine. But if you start getting to the point where you're trying to do like 3 sets of 50 reps or 100 reps, would that technically still work? Yes. Are you getting a little bit of muscular endurance? Yes. But would that still work? Yes. But it's not effective. It's not efficient. You're going to be in the gym forever, guys, if you're in there trying to do sets of 50. That's why we have structured rep ranges. That's why doing something like, 3 sets of 10 to 12 with a minute and a half rest in between is so useful. Once again, that's why it's the hypertrophy rep range, because it allows you to get in and get out. It's convenient more than anything. There's nothing special about it physiologically compared to other rep ranges. It's just a convenient way to get in, get the work done, and get out. And like I said, other rep ranges have their advantages and disadvantages as well. So it all comes down to really what's convenient for you, what's best for you. But this mindset that powerlifters, they work in a certain rep range and they only get stronger, and bodybuilders work in a certain rep range and they get bigger, that's not how it works, guys. And like I said, if you really want to understand more of the science behind it, then go ahead and just read that link in the description down below. It breaks it down for you very well. I did my best not to get as scientific as the article did, because I know a lot of you guys like that I break things down simply and just give it to you in bits and pieces like this, and I hope I was able to effectively do that. With that being said, if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment down below, let me know that you did. If you did not enjoy the video, leave a comment down below, let me know what I can do to get better. Like the video, share, subscribe, keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch y'all later.
I am the greatest.
Someone look color. Someone look color.